All right, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys had a great short week. Definitely a lot of interesting developments in the news overnight. Of course, we'll take a look at that. Going to give you a quick rundown of the Qs, the SPYs, the Teslas, the Apples, what to look out for next week. A lot of big things happening next week as well, and also the week after. So let's just go and start with the news. And of course, Elon Musk back in the spotlight. He via an internal email, he says that he's got a super bad feeling. I didn't know a man. I don't know, a man like whoever, right, can actually move the markets by an internal email. And what kind of super bad feeling is he really talking about, right? Elon Musk wants to cut 10% of Tesla jobs. Now, the jobs report actually came out mildly decent over today. So if you guys saw the numbers, however, we are still in very much in an area where the job numbers was better than expected, but very poor given the trends, right? So a lot of stuff happening with that, and of course that caused a lot of the market to fall today. But the biggest news today was, of course, this whole thing about Elon Musk, okay, and saying that he wants to lay off 10% of his workforce. Other news, of course, this week has been the Feds, Bullard and Meister, both talking and actually contradicting each other. Meister says today that inflation hasn't peaked and multiple half-point rate hikes are needed. She also said quite a few things in the via CNBC today as well that didn't sound exactly like what Bullard said just yesterday. So she says, once again, inflation hasn't peaked. She also said could back 50 BPS September hike if inflation does not cool. I personally think we should do 100 BPS. Fedmeister also said that she doesn't see a hurricane, but risk of recession have increased. Now, if you remember what Bullard said just yesterday, that there is a very low chance of recession. So which is it? And this is what's driving the market crazy. We are not getting a sense of direction today over all these comments. So my personal view, I don't think the Fed has a good grasp on what's happening. Okay. I do think the CPI data, which is coming out next Friday morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern, is going to suggest dun, 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 that CPI or inflation has not gone down. Okay, so what are we expecting? So there's no big economic data for most of the week. Some international data coming out. GDP for Europe, that might be pretty big on Wednesday. GDP for other countries as well coming out next week. I'm looking through a lot of Asian news coming out as well on Sunday and Monday. Japan is usually you want to pay attention to Japan, one of the biggest Asian markets, of course. PMI, Hong Kong, and China. These might be important on Sunday night. That might affect the markets on Monday. The big one for us in the United States would be, of course, the CPI going into Monday. I'm sorry, going into Friday. So I could see a valid reason why the markets will pump next week. But with the oils continue shooting up $120 a barrel, we'll see. All right. So anyway, consumer price index. I'm actually going to look at the core. The core index 6.2. So remember back on May 11th. 6.2 came out, and it was actually a little bit slightly higher than the forecast. Okay, so if you go back to the Qs and we look at what happened on May 11th, right about here, we did dip, from 298 all the way down to 291, and then the following day we went to 284. So just gonna see what happens with the CPI data. My personal view is that they're hoping that this continues to go down, right? So you got a forecast of 5.9%. So here's the magic number for next week. If it's 6.0, all right, any number above, let's say 6.0, I think it's going to rock the markets on the downside. If the numbers actually come in at 5.9 or lower, then you're going to see this graph. And yes, there will be more evidence of the inflation cooling off. So we'll see what happens with that. Also, going look at the U.S. CPI last reporting May 11th when the market started dipping. It actually came in 8.3. It was higher than the forecast, lower than the previous. So you got some sense of optimism here. But if it stays flat, let's just say it stays elevated with this upcoming report on Friday, then you should see the markets not liking that at all, which suggests that the Fed pause is not going to be paused, which whatever gave the market that notion. And I think you'll see multiple rate hikes of 50 BPS down the road, not just two meetings, but multiple meetings, because that's what Messner said today. She said now it's multiple meetings. Remember, the Fed said two meetings, which is what, June and July. Now it's going to be June, July, August. And of course, June 15th is the FOMC release. In addition to that, on that day is also when the Fed starts to tighten their MBSs and US treasuries. Okay, so those are going to be some critical things happening in the market going into the next 2 weeks or so. All right, anyway, so let's go back to the chart. I'm going to start with the daily on the Q. Now, the stochastics is starting to curl. Okay, so we got that part. Remember when we went up to 372? Okay, this is an area where it starts to curl. Now, it doesn't signal exactly that now we're officially in a downtrend, because if you just look at the stochastic, when they started to curl right about on the downside here, right about here, let's just say here, all right, on May 23rd, you can see from that point on, when the stochastic started to curl, the Qs actually ran to additional 20 points or so. Okay, so you could see that happening here. So I wouldn't be surprised next week during some type of run up for CPI that we go back into this cloud about 318, 320 is entirely possible. All right, let's go to the 2-hour chart just to see what's happening here. Oh, by the way, this pattern here, I'm just looking at bar patterns, nothing very specific, is looking like this here. Okay. So we, like I said, we could see more days of choppiness within range, like 303, 308, 311, 312. It's just going to stay range bound perhaps until CPI. So it might be just a brewing of, a choppy week ahead. Going on to the 2-hour chart, I do have to warn, if you are a bear, be careful with your risk sizes. If you're a bear, go long puts, okay? And you can swing those pretty easily. Like end of June, I'm still in the end of June puts right now. I'm only down by a penny on them. It's not really a big deal. So we got a good chunk of it back today on the dip. But if you look at the 2-hour chart, this is what's concerning, is that it's the bulls, or the market is holding this 305, 303 area, okay? EMA 21, it's literally closed at the EMA 21 on the 2-hour chart. So if I draw this line here and just suggest that perhaps this is going to be a short-term support right about 303, okay? If the 303 holds next week, and I'll publish a watch list on Monday, see how the market's open over pre-market. But if the 303 holds, then you're likely going to see some type of bounce here. Okay, so we could see one of these type of things going into next week. All right, and to retest and fill this gap right here. Okay, you guys see this gap right here? So it could end up in a situation where because it's now that we are oversold on the 2-hour chart, you're going to see a bounce up. It's going to flush and then try to fill this gap up to the 312 level. That gap has to get filled. So I'm not very so bearish to ignore that signal that the market does want to run. Okay, and we'll eventually test 315, 314 once again on some point next week. If I go to the 4-hour chart, okay, the 4-hour chart does suggest, though, the stochastic's curling again, but it doesn't mean necessarily it's just going to dump. However, the downtrend is starting to kick in, just like on the daily. But on the mini charts, on the 2-hour and smaller time frames, do expect that bounce going into next week. So on the 4-hour chart, nothing to see here, but here I want to show you guys this though. All right, let's go to the weekly chart. All right, I probably won't need to cover SPY. It looks pretty much the same. Here on the 4-hour chart, at least, if you're a bull and you are just kind of biased in that direction, you're going to see a natural bull flag happening here. But you look at this shooting star setup on the weekly. Now, we did end a 7-week streak red week with this bounce candle here last week, okay? But you're seeing that we got rejected at 315 because that's the EMA 9 on the weekly. And now we have a shooting star. So it's not, obviously, we're not erasing last week's gains, but that's not a great pattern for this brand new week of June, or new first week of June. Okay. If you look at patterns that typically with these shooting star setups, you see one here. All right. And you see one here. So it doesn't look exactly the same. And definitely back when Q ran to the highest points at 408, 407, you had a shooting star there. Okay. So lack of volume, there is some selling supply here. So that's why you saw so much selling at 315 today. Of course, Elon Musk helped that. All right. You have a break-even supply zone. The next support, if it falls down, all right, it falls below 300, then we'll see it start seeing maybe consolidation at the 290 level or 300 below. I still feel that at least at some point next week, the markets will take off in preparate, or, to hype up the CPI that, hey, we're not as bad as, everybody thinks. So that's the cue for going into next week. One more thing, I'll pop open my stochastics and CCIs. All right. So again, 2-hour chart, CCI is starting to get oversold here. All right, starting to catch a dip here. This Harsey RSI line is starting to curl back up, and you can see here, whenever this starts to curl, especially with stochastics, you generally will see another pump up. It should get overbought pretty quickly, though. So that's why I'm thinking around this range, we might need to fill that gap at 312 and probably revisit 315 on Monday and Tuesday. So if you're in the long-term puts, I would say hold on to them. But hedge the puts and scalp some calls on going into a Monday. All right. So with that being said, let's go ahead and go to actually what I'm looking at to next week. AMD. Let's talk about AMD real quick, okay? AMD bull flag on the 4-hour chart. It's staircasing up. It was not really. It didn't get sold off as much as everybody would have liked. If you're a bear, it's only actually down 2% on the day. All right. So if AMD goes, you're going to see the Q start to run. So there might be a situation where the bulls are starting to step in and save the market with AMD, but you got the shooting star on the uptrend as well. And that's what it's looking like. So you may see a reversal. 2-hour chart, 104 dip, possibly maybe some calls here. We'll have to see what happens on Monday. But at least on the 4-hour chart, we're still very much oversold. So this is a good watch going into Monday. If I go to the 2-hour charts, we're still kind of oversold here. CCI is kind of dipping here. But definitely for sure, the daily does not look good on the AMD. But it's just got that sense where the bulls want to step in and save the market here. All right, so that's AMD. All right, so let's take a look at Tesla. Tesla closed right above 700, tested 700 exactly on the dot, and closed above the 703. Why? Obviously, there's a 2-hour volume shelf here. Okay, on the weekly chart, not good. It's given up half the gains that it got last week. Okay, and going on the daily chart, you're seeing this kind of bear flag setup with Tesla. All right. If Tesla does not hold the 680 level, then you're going to see a retest real quick. Okay. And then is there a gap here? No, there's no gap. You're going to see that retest of the 621 from several weeks ago. And you can see today, one candle filled this little gap here between 720, 719. So as far as 2-hour chart goes, kind of bear flagging here, not, consolidating at a 700 level. It might take an economic event for this to go down further. But I am sure at some point on Monday, the bulls are going to step in and try to run up Tesla because, there's a lot of Tesla fanboys out there. All right, let's take a look at Apple. Apple 2-hour chart, we're oversold on the stochastics. Okay. Daily stochastics starting to curl as well. All right. So you're starting to get the sense that the market is starting to weaken. All right. Not saying it won't run up. However, it's given up some of the gains already, about 1/3 of the gains as it did of the gains from last week already. Low volume week, ladies and gentlemen, low volume week. There's not a lot of volume during the month of June, so we'll see what happens with Apple. One more, let's see, two more. I'll give you two more. What I'm watching for next week. There's a lot of put coming in on the flows for coin. Okay. A lot of 70 and 75 puts for August and September. August 19th timeframe. All right. There's even a sweep here as well. So I'm going to be looking at this next week for a possible entry. If there's a pump somehow on coin, I might play some puts. They're probably the whales are sitting on or counting on the fact that the Bitcoin BTC starts to move down or has another pump and another leg down on Bitcoin. So I'm going to watch that for going into next week. So coin, I believe we do have a gap to fill. Yes. No, it's been filled. No, not quite. No gaps on the downside. Sorry. There is gaps on the upside, of course, at the $96 level. So we'll see what happens. There's definitely a lot of support here as well. So we'll see what happens with coin next week. So see if we can grab an entry here. All right. Next Thursday, Docusign reports. Okay. This is one that I would like to grab some cheap, out the money puts and play the rundown towards earnings. So that their earnings are next Thursday. All right. Last earnings, as you can see, tanked a whole $20-$30. Okay. About 25-30% drop. Came back, filled the gap, getting rejected at the EMA. So give me a pump to like 88. All right. If the markets move up, let me jot that down actually. Give me a pump to 88 and then let's play some 70 puts. All right. So with that being said, I think that's all the updates that I can give you at this time. If you guys, let's see. I'm kind of running down my checklist, see if I missed anything. Oh, okay, let's take a look at SPY real quick. Actually, I'm 2 hour. Okay, last one. SPY is actually curling up on a 2 hour. The stochastics. In addition to that, also the CCI is starting to flatten out. The dip on Harsey. All right, so this is the channel that it's going on. Now, if you're a bear, you need this to come down here. All right, this needs to go back under 400. All right, or maybe bounce back the 403 level. But if you're a bull, you need this level to hold. Honestly, the worst case for the bulls is that it loses the 407, 406 area. You can see this bounce right here. All right, so that would be a triple bottom bounce if it actually did bounce. All right, so the 407 area is an area where it needs to hold. If not, then you're going to see this come down closer to 400 before another move up, if there is another leg up. So with that being said, I hope you guys have a great week.